Well, hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. Betty, we are in the city of...
Don't ask me, because, at this point they all look like me. Until I'm more familiar and I can see a sign or something, even though I can't read Chinese, I kind of know where I am. You tell me.
Well, this was the town that we always mispronounced.
What?
We always said
You said it sounded like noodles, can of
Chongqing.
Chongqing. Good advertising for that company, by the way.
That's true.
We'll have to send them a bill.
We always thought that was the name of this town, but it's not. And I think the last show we learned how to pronounce it correctly.
Well, anyway, we know where we are now, but what are we looking at?
We're looking at this beautiful building that is here that is used mainly for political events, I guess is what I should say. It's kind of like the city hall. That's where it is. I mean, this is our city hall here in the middle of the city, and it's a beautiful building. Look at the inside of that.
Yeah, we're going to hear a little bit more about the description of it from one of our guides, but this is just sort of a preview that when she starts talking about it, you'll have an idea of what it is she's talking about.
And the other thing too, that on this particular show, she's going to give us sort of a history lesson, which I thought was very interesting because I didn't know what the chronological order of when the nationalists came in, when the Chinese communists had the Civil War, and of course this all happened, I guess, after World War II. And we had just seen the last show. We had been there where General Chenault was, with the Flying Tigers.
Look there a minute. You would almost think you were at an opera house or in.
That's what it looks like.
It does because of the loggias there on the different tiers.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. She said in her dialogue that this was just used for political stuff. But, I would sort of bet that this was also used for opera and other presentations as well.
That's probably how they got the money to build it when it was going to be political. The money comes out when it's for political purposes.
Well, we're going to listen to her now as she explains it to us.
Started from 1951, finished 1954, took us 3 years for the grand building, and mostly by volunteer work. At that time, 1941, Chinese Communist Party just took power in this place only 1 year. To build this building, we spent lots of money and energy. And as soon as it was finished, it became the landmark of Chongqing. I said, it is the Qing and Ming construction style, with the ceilings very high, 45 meters high, and eggshell. And many stairs going up to the center of the stage. Show your respect. So Emperor's Place always like this, many stairs going up there. So it is just like we call the Forbidden City style, So Ming and Qing construction, And those seats we call softer seats now. We used to have very, very hard seats for meetings. The purpose for this building just for political meetings. Who are the people to finish the grand building here? We call Mr. Deng Xiaoping. He was the native of Sichuanese. His hometown only 6 hours from Chongqing. I think everybody knows Deng Xiaoping very well, right? Deng Xiaoping, right? He gave the reform policy to China. Very sharp man. Was born in Sichuan, in Chongqing here. So he used to be the leader of the southwest region in Sichuan area. In this area, he was the leader. So the designer of this building, Mr. Zhang, he was personally persecuted by the Red Guards during the Cultural Revolution. China went through many political movements. The most famous one is the Cultural Revolution. I think you are very familiar with Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976. Chinese intellectuals and also those people suffered a lot. So the designer of this building, Mr. Zhang, he was persecuted by the Red Guards during the Cultural Revolution. So it became the last and only one building during his life. So that's the last one. China, in 1940s, we had the Civil War, Chinese Communist Party and the Kuomintang fighting against each other after we drove the Japanese out of the country. Civil War for another almost 4 years. Brother and sister were fighting each other. And then Communist Party took power in China. Communist Party took power in China, and then we have the political movement which was called Overthrow the Landlords. We killed many big landlords in China and returned the lands to the farmers. And then China went through a very nice period. And by the year 1958, we had great leap forward, another political movement taking place in China. During those years, Communist Party, especially our leaders Mao, thought maybe the Third World War would take place. What Chinese should do, make more weapons to against the United States, our biggest enemy at that time. So during those years, people were really mad. My mother said all the families were required to handle all the metal things like the door, the handle of the doors, and the basing, all those things to the government to make iron and steel to make weapons. So that kind of movement lasted almost 3 years in China. We call the Great Leap Forward. And also during those periods, China had great problems with the food. We have no food, China. Why? Natural disaster for almost 3 years, in 1958 till 1961. And then we had a very nice time, and also that was a period we call the commune. We had the commune also set up at that time. And then by the year 1966, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution. Many reasons for him to launch the Cultural Revolution, but who knows which is the real one. Anyhow, during his later period, Mao was really out of control, the China. He gave the power to his wife, a lady also called the Dragon Lady in Chinese history. So 4 people control the whole country. We call them the Ganon 4, including Mao's wife. So during the later period of Mao, he was mentally disordered almost. Give the power to the 4 people. And the 4 people did a lot of bad things in Chinese history, like torture those intellectuals, the artists, the scientists. All those people suffered a lot. They say they had the tail of the capitalists. So if Nancy was a guide before Cultural Revolution, I would be tortured myself. Why? They will consider me as a spy. I had lots of foreign tourists to talk and know English. So those people were suffering during the Cultural Revolution. And by the year 1976, Mao passed away. Mao Zedong passed away. And the same year, we lost our great leader, Premier Zhou Enlai as well. Zhou Enlai. So after Mao passed away, the Ganon 4, the 4 people were in jail, put Mao's wife in jail. She finished herself in jail, suicide in jail. So Mao never thought after he passed away, his wife would be in jail, right? And then Deng Xiaoping came to power. Deng Xiaoping gave the reform policy to China. Still, we are following his policy. Without him, we have no tourists, we have no cruises, we have no 4 or 5-star hotels in China. We would never open our door to the outside. But after he gave the policy to Chinese people, China opened and developed so quick. 50 years ago, when you see General Stilwell, Chanel, all the Americans, the hamsters came to China to help the Chinese people. They came just for the freedom for the people here and also the whole world against fascism. And 50 years later, you came to China. That is another way to help Chinese finance, right? So without Deng Xiaoping, we would never have tourists. We would never build up some of the cruises like a Princess Leia or some sort of cruise like that. And with his policy, China became stronger and stronger. So Deng Xiaoping is loved by the people in China.
And also located in this building was a gallery, and they were showing us a little bit about some of the Chinese paintings. So let's listen to our guide here.
Sichuan Fine Art Academy, which is the largest one in Asia. Now there are mainly 2 sections of our gallery. This gallery, this part are mainly traditional Chinese paintings, and that part are oil paintings. The 2 sections are connected by a corridor. Do you want to know something about traditional Chinese paintings? Traditional Chinese paintings, it can date back to 6,000 years ago. It means the Neolithic period. According to the means of expression, Chinese traditional paintings, it can be classified into 2 categories. One is called Xie School. You can see just like, yeah, these paintings. Is frequent. And next is deep stone. Because we saw these
So, Betty, I don't know. I think I could do some of this painting.
You know, it looks kind of like what you had the kids do in kindergarten or first grade. You put a blot and then spread it out a little bit. But of course, that's not the way it looks. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
No, I couldn't do it. You probably could.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, it was very interesting to watch these artists, and you know, they had a lot of this for sale, but it was a little beyond my pocketbook. So
Yeah, but did you ever think too what you'd do with it when you got it home? I mean,
put it
has
on the
to.
wall.
No kidding. But it has to fit in with a certain decor. I
Sure
mean,
does,
you know.
yeah. Well, and Chinese seems to always fit in with whatever you do. I think a little piece of Chinese art is always very good. Hey, now we have moved on down the road and we have gone to a silk factory. Betty, this was the first time that I've seen a real factory at work like this. You know, you and I have been to Turkey where we saw, and also to Egypt where we see them making rugs out of the beautiful silk that they have. But this is the first time for me that I saw how they actually get the little cocoon. That's right, isn't it? Cocoon?
It's that cocoon,
Yeah.
right. Mm-hmm.
And then what they do with it, and I mean, this was a big operation. Big operation.
I watch her hands as she's doing this, and it's almost like she's playing a harp.
Yeah.
The fingers with the movement on it. But you know, Marv, it was kind of uncomfortable for me because I thought the conditions in which they worked were really pretty miserable. The floor is wet, which it has to be from all the water and stuff. And they have to keep busy. You have to pay attention to what you're doing all the time.
Oh yeah, you've never worked in a cannery, huh?
Yes, I have.
Have you?
Yeah, but
The floors were wet in a cannery.
But what I did, I did the sorting, you know, and all I did was get sick, you know, from watching the movement of the fruit going by.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I pick grapes too. So
Okay. Well,
All right.
did the same thing. Okay. So that's why we can kind of feel
you relate to this,
right
you know.
now. And I'm sure that these people put in long hours, as we can see. They seemed to be relatively happy, and they were glad that we were visiting, you know.
Well, it's a job. But let me, you know, the thing is about I had silkworms in my classroom. I brought some back one time, and when you think about all of the silk that they get from one of those little cocoons, and see how they have to unwind them.
Yeah.
And it's just, oh my goodness, God has wonderful plans, doesn't he?
I think so.
You know.
Yeah.
They have to kill the worm inside first. How do they kill? Heat. The heat. Otherwise, it became the butterfly out. And when they became butterfly out, the cocoon have no use. The thread broke out. So the first time, they have to put them in a machine to heat, get them dry, and then they get the silk out when it is dry. It is wet. So this is the first workshop.
Well, this is we see here where they are heating these up like that. You have to kill the worm, right?
Absolutely. Well, like she said, if you didn't, it would break the threads,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't get anything from it.
You know, that's
And it sounds cruel, though, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but you know, these are raised specifically for
that.
this, you know.
And after all, we do boil lobsters too, don't we?
Ooh.
Well.
Yeah, you're absolutely
okay.
right.
But
Yeah.
these are functional things, and that's
You know what I saw in this factory, Betty, that after I started looking at these videotapes again, I didn't realize it the day that we were there. It's all women workers. All women workers in this factory.
they probably have the men out picking them off the leaves of the trees and
Might
whatever,
be.
huh?
I thought this gal really had a job. Now, she's taking this big sack of the cocoons, and she's going to put it into, to me, it looked like a pressure cooker. I don't know. I mean, she's going to jam that stuff down and put the lid down. But I guess this is probably one of the first steps that you have to have in heating the cocoon so that you kill the worm inside, right?
You kind of bake them, you know, like she said, and then you boil them so that the silk comes out. Well, like we saw, it comes out. And, you know, the very mechanism that they use to unwind the cocoon is fascinating.
That is. And then to think, then they think that you can dye the silk afterwards, and then go ahead and use that as the thread, silk thread,
Yeah.
for either doing the rugs or other things. Of course, what we're familiar with, I think, are a lot of rugs.
Right. But Marv, there's so many silk things on the market today. Actually, when you go to look for blouses, you'll find so much silk, and it's very, very reasonable. It can compare with some of the polyester blouses that you buy,
I thought
and
silk
yet
was
it's
better.
silk.
Isn't silk better?
Well, compare in price.
Oh,
Price-wise,
okay,
I'm
all right.
sorry, price-wise. And it's quite warm. Silk is warm.
Well, this is one I have here in my hand, and taking a look at it, you can see that it looks like there's maybe a couple of miles of silk that are wrapped up into that cocoon. I want to see if the thing were alive, so tapping on it, but it wasn't.
I never did
Didn't move.
find out how much they get from one cocoon, how many miles. I think it must be miles, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Those small threads, I don't know. Anyway, we can see here now these, some of these have been dyed, and here's a young lady who is actually making one of these rugs.
They are so beautiful. I have one at home, and it's silk, and it's gorgeous, and the colors sort of change.
They do. It changes in the light. You go on one side of the rug, and it looks one color, and then you walk around on the other side, and for some reason it captures the light just differently, and it becomes a different color.
But look at the poor little thing sitting there with the,
Yep.
and we saw the children, didn't
Right,
we?
in some of the other countries we
yes,
have,
yes,
that's true.
yes.
Now, this gentleman here, he's making like a wall hanging or a picture, and this is all done, of course, needle and thread. He's doing a different type of, it's not weaving, but
I think it's
you call it
beading.
sewing
I think
or
it's
what?
beading.
Is that what it's
Beading.
called?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
You got
agree with
if you
you.
buy a dress like beaded, you say it's a beaded dress.
Okay, great. I'll go with that. Okay, we have now left this city. We have flown to another city called Guangzhou.
I don't think our listeners or viewers are really concerned if we make a little bit of a mistake.
I hope not. We know this town. We know this area is Canton, and the Cantonese area. And we had left the city where we had just left was Sichuan area. So where she had explained to us once before that the food was a little spicy, but not really that spicy. Anyway, this is our guide Neil, and Neil is going to take us to a place. Betty, this really surprised me. I knew that we were going to go and visit a beautiful new building. Well, the building is not quite that new, but it's been there for a while. And this monument here, this building, is built in honor of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who was the first president, of course, of China. And he was the one that was able to kind of bring all the Chinese factions together. And there's one of the television trucks there, and it sort of gave us an idea. Now, hey, wait a minute. Now, what's going on here? Yeah. Anytime we see something like that, we know something interesting must be going on. So, actually, we got inside of the building, another beautiful building, very similar to the one that we had seen at the City Hall. And but then again, we saw all these people dressed up like this. What is going on here? I mean, they've got to have
Not a
something.
revolt.
No, I don't think so. These were all young people,
Yeah.
very energetic, smiles on their faces, and they seemed to be so pleasant. So many of them came by and said hello or ni hai, and they were. Notice that we had a little television camera too, so they were kind of waving to that. There's a bust of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. And as we got inside, we noticed that they were having, as we can see here on their board, a rehearsal.
Well, read it, Marv.
Okay, it says group number 6, get ready because you're up next.
You're so talented. You
No, I lie a
constantly
lot.
amaze me.
Anyway, we can see some of the cast members over here. What was happening was this was a television rehearsal. It was not a dress rehearsal because you can see some of the dancers are still not quite with it yet. But what they were doing is they were going to celebrate in this beautiful, magnificent building and do the television show there. This was the 80th anniversary of the Communist Party. And of course, you can see here the leaders that our guide had spoken about earlier. There's Mao, I would say Sun Yat-sen, of course, is not there because he wasn't communist, but Chou En-lai, and who's the other one?
Chao Ping.
Dao Che-ping. Yeah, you've got it. Anyway, they were, as we see, they're just getting ready to start one of the rehearsals. So it was kind of a treat for us. So we got a chance to sit down and listen to some of Betty's favorite music. Well,
Are you being facetious?
Yeah, I
or-
really
yes,
am.
I
know.
thought so.
Betty's really not turned on to Chinese music, but anyway, the kids were here, and I thought they were giving a fairly good performance. You see the guy walking around there; he's got a microphone in his hand. I think that's the choreographer or the director, because he's kind of pushing the kids aside from time to time. And we can see they're not really quite all together just yet, but their production, I imagine, was probably very, very good.
Well, with their costumes, everything with costumes makes a difference, you know.
You know, Betty, and I have to comment on this. The time that we were there, the Olympic bid had not been given yet had not been given to China, I should say. And the Chinese were promoting on their television channels, and they have several networks in China. They were promoting that they hoped that they would get, the Olympics. And I have to say, the production values are some of the best I've ever seen anywhere in the world.
What do you mean production values?
The whole production of what they did for their 1 and 2 minute promos.
Okay,
for that.
okay.
And they were, I was spellbound. The stuff was really, really good. And you and I we're fortunate enough to be able to see television all over the world, and can take a look and see what some of the other countries are doing, and then come back here, and we know that we don't have the equipment to do this, but of course we're talking about great big networks and lots of money, and they did an absolutely excellent job. So I can imagine when this show probably got together and went on the air, I bet it was a real spectacular event for them.
Well, it looks sort of mediocre right now to me. You think?
Well, I think they're just sort of in their, their stages here of rehearsal. Even though the truck was there, so it meant that they were probably going through some early camera movements.
Yeah,
too.
I would have rather waited until they had their costumes on and seen it. But
That would have been nice.
Well, that would have been a month later,
Yeah,
probably.
that's right. I think so. Anyway, this was, of course, a big celebration for the Chinese people. And it was interesting, I think, earlier in the show today that we learned some of the history of what China went through since the 1940s right up until today. Yeah. And I lived through a lot of this stuff, but I didn't remember some of this history. Did you?
No. You know why? Because it happened a while ago, and we got turned off on it. At least I did. I shouldn't say we. But it's sort of like anytime there's the conflict that it's played up so much, and I think you have a tendency to take sides and be prejudiced and stuff. And I'm happy to see the big turnabout that there is now. And when they talked really about how deprived they were during these days,
right.
Not enough to eat, and the people were really, really suffering, and they were tortured. I mean.
Right.
I know it's not just China, that this is something that happens universally, but you don't hear about it until after the fact.
I think that's true. In fact, even right now, in various parts of the world, the same things are going on.
Right.
And this is a tragedy. You would think as we go on in civilization that we would become more civilized and have more humanity toward one another, but for some reason it just doesn't seem to work.
I think we've had about enough of this. How come you put so much on?
Well, I wanted to see the whole thing. I want to see what they do.
Yeah, but you didn't. Did we reach a conclusion here,
Yeah.
or did we just? Did
No,
we really?
She hits the high note here pretty quick.
Oh,
So.
oh, that's a. It isn't that I dislike the music, but it's so high. It kind of reverberates in my ears, and it's tinny.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you go, again, all over the world, there's different types of music that different type of people, are listening. And, I know that you just love rock and roll.
I don't know. I really like. I like cowboy. I like Western.
Are you a country and Western fan?
Oh yeah. I do.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You're a closet country and Western fan?
I'm not a closet one.
You're out
I
open
really
with
am
it.
out in the open with it. Yeah, I love it. I do.
Well, that's great. Well, this was about the end of their rehearsal, and it was nice that we had the opportunity to happen.
Well, I'm
to be
glad
there
it's
tonight.
the end right now.
Well, we should have maybe stayed for another act. You never know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
but
get a
this-
real quick
yeah.
shot of the building here. As we can see, it's very similar to the other one that we saw as well. And it was really nice. So Betty is picking up the group, and
Let's
we're off and
go.
running. Yeah.
Come on.
So we're going to take a look at the outside of the grounds here a little bit more. This was really a beautiful building, though, I will have to say, that in his memory.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm panning you, of course, when I do
Right.
this, but it was interesting.
Yeah, it
You know,
was.
and it gave us a wonderful break too. The seats were marvelously comfortable, and then to see the different people and some were dressed differently,
Mm-hmm.
and they were so nice and pleasant, and
They were.
I kind of like to have that intercultural feeling with people. So even though I wasn't very nice to you right now, it was fine.
I
It
know
really
that you
was.
enjoyed it.
We
I know.
enjoyed it.
It was
We did.
it was fun. In fact, we've happened along as we go through some of our travels. Every now and then we get a real treat of something that we don't expect, and that becomes just sort of like a
Yeah,
double treat.
bonus.
Yeah, this area of southern China to me was very fascinating. It is very, very extremely clean, very, very modern. Look, Betty, no bicycles.
No bicycles.
No, look what they're riding.
Motorcycles. No, they
Yeah,
don't call them motorcycles. Motor
scooters.
scooters, huh?
I guess that's it.
Well, see, that's another great change. When we were there, I was there with my husband. I don't know. My goodness, it has to have been maybe 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was primitive with the bicycles with the food hanging on it, the live chickens,
Yep.
the dead chickens, whatever.
No, it has changed quite a
So
bit.
you see how you've come a long way, baby.
Right.
Hmm?
That sign on the left is, again, promoting that 80th anniversary of the Communist Party, as we can see right there.
So from 1895 to 1911, Dr. Sun Yat-sen led 11 armed uprisings against the Qing government. And 7 of them were in this province. That's why the memorial hall was built in Guangzhou. And he was also leader of the 1911 revolution and led to the overthrow of the Qing dynasty. So at the end of 1911, China became a republic, and Dr. Sun Yat-sen was the first president of China, Republic of China. That's why the people in Taiwan or the overseas Chinese still call him as the father of the country, because he's supposed to be the father of modern China. But in the mainland China, we don't call him as the father. Maybe Mao is the father, right? And the word father of the country, it means the father of Republic of China. It's not the People's Republic.
Well, we learned a lot about Chinese history today. And Betty, it's just about time for us to go, so you better give your phone number for everybody that's interested in the trips we've got coming up.
I'll be glad to. My number is 559-488-7443.
And that's about all the time that we have right now, so we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.